So Terence Crawford says he's going straight into the Spence fight, and after that, he will F up Jermell Charlo at 154 pounds. So nothing but the absolute supreme confidence that you would expect from Bud Crawford here. He said, quote, "I'm going straight into it. I don't want no tune-up fights. I don't want nothing. I want to go straight into the Spence fight. I'm free to do whatever I want. There's nothing standing in the way of us fighting. There's no promotion company that's blocking it. There's no wrong side of the street. There's no nothing. Let's see who the best welterweight in the world is." Now, everybody's saying that Errol's back and he's 100% ready. So now is the perfect time for me and him to fight. He called me out after he beat Ugas in April. So it ain't no backing up. He goes on to say that the Spence fight is now bigger than ever. He said there's a lot at stake, undisputed on the line. That's bigger than the fight was going. That's bigger than the fight that was going to happen between us in the past. This is my second undisputed title in 2 different weight classes. That's never been done before in the history of boxing, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Actually, it has been done. Holyfield was undisputed at cruiserweight and heavyweight. There may be other people, I'm not sure, but off the top of my head, Holyfield definitely did it. Anyway, back to the Terence Crawford quote. He said, "The way we can get this fight done is them sending me an offer, and we look at the offer and sit down at the table and we discuss what's needed from both sides. Team Spence, Team Crawford, and we get the fight done like that. My team is just waiting on them to get in touch with us and make the fight happen. It's time to happen. The time is now for undisputed. I just think this is a fight where I can display my skills and my talent to the fullest. I think Spence is a great fighter, and I think being in the ring with another great fighter will bring the greatness out of me." He then finishes up by saying, "I'm effing up Jermell Charlo. Put that in there. After I beat Spence, I'm moving up and I'm effing up Charlo," end quote. Okay, so obviously we like, or I certainly like Terence Crawford's confidence here. Very bullish on what he thinks he can do to Errol Spence and Jermell Charlo. And you really have to be impressed by what Bud Crawford has done so far, of course, because he's moved up through the weights. He's not a guy like Spence who spent his whole career at 147 pounds. This is a guy who was, what, super featherweight did he turn pro at? Then he's moved all the way up to 147. So impressive stuff from Bud Crawford, just being so successful moving up through the weights. Now, with regards to a Spence fight, Spence has impressed me massively in the way that he's come back. I'm sure everyone's been impressed by the way he's come back from that car crash, because more often than not, when somebody suffers the injuries that he suffered and goes through something so physically and psychologically traumatic as that car crash, they're never quite the same again. How Errol Spence managed to come back the way he did. I mean, he didn't look quite himself against Danny Garcia, but he still dominated Garcia like nobody ever had. But against Ugas, he looked not only like his old self, dare I say it, he looked better than ever. The only caveat I'll add is his punch resistance, because that moment where he gets caught by Ugas, was it in the 5th or the 6th round? And he looks at his gum shield after it gets knocked out on the floor, and then Ugas follows up and Spence falls into the ropes. I think Spence was more hurt than I certainly initially realized watching him. I realized he was hurt watching the fight, but it's not until I watched the highlights back. I think it was on PBC's YouTube channel. They had a very short highlight clip, and it showed that 6th round. And I know other people have talked about this, but this is something I was talking about in my Element group, and something I was talking to Tebow. Shout out to Tebow about on Instagram. And there's a moment, I want to say 10, 15 seconds prior to Spence's gum shield getting knocked out, where Ugas hits Spence with a right hand in the mouth, and Spence's back leg buckles. It's like he almost steps on his own ankle. You know them ones? His back leg buckles. I'm not sure Ugas noticed it, but certainly on the broadcast, I think the commentators noticed it. I certainly noticed it. But yeah, perhaps Ugas didn't. And then after that is when Spence gets hit and his gum shield comes out. So it appears as though Spence was actually hurt from the first shot that buckled his back leg, but he managed to hide it. He managed to disguise it. The second shot actually detached him from his senses a little bit because he did something that was illogical. He took his eyes off his opponent. His gum shield gets knocked out and he's looking for his gum shield on the canvas instead of watching what his opponent is doing. And I know Spence after the fight said it was a rookie mistake. Well, Spence is not a rookie. He made that mistake, I'm going to say, he made that mistake because he was hurt and he didn't quite know where he was for a second. Now, he recovered very quickly. But yeah, I think that Spence's punch resistance might be in question a little bit. I'm not saying he's chinny or anything like that. But I'm sure Bud Crawford can hit at least as hard as Ugas, if not harder. And if Crawford was in the position Ugas was in, where he hits Spence, buckles his leg, knocks his gum shield out and has him looking for his gum shield and then knocks him back into the ropes, Bud Crawford is going to go for the kill. He's not going to stand off and let you recover. Crawford has shown time and time again that he's a very good finisher. In fact, you could argue that he might be the best finisher at 147 right now. So there are many things that are impressive about Spence. I do wonder how Bud Crawford would handle Spence's physical strength, how he would handle his relentlessness. His work rate is incredible. His punch variety. Once Spence gets going, he gets into that percussive rhythm like we saw against Ugas. He's just like a machine. It's like watching the Terminator. This guy won't stop. Up and down body. He just don't leave you alone. It's crazy. When Spence gets going, it is like a force of nature. I've compared him to Hagler in the past, and I stand by that comparison. I'm not saying that their styles are identical, but there are certain similarities in terms of the way they go about their work. They're both very methodical fighters. Hagler was a switch hitter. Spence is exclusively southpaw. But Hagler, like Spence, when he got going, he just wouldn't leave you alone. He would keep hitting on you and hitting her upstairs, downstairs, left, right, every shot in the book until you crumble. Just ask John the Beast Mugabe about that. Yeah? So, very interesting fight. So many things to think about. So many strengths and weaknesses to weigh up. Not many weaknesses, mostly strengths that both guys have. But if I'm Crawford's people, I'm looking at Spence's punch resistance and thinking that might be something to take. Not that they are not confident anyway, but it might be something that they could hone in on, is his punch resistance, And Bud Crawford is an underrated puncher. For many years, you had Keith Thurman running around calling himself one time, and he can punch, of course, but he's not historically a great puncher. He's not up there with the Tommy Hearnses and the great punchers at 147. In fact, an argument could be made, a strong argument, that Bud Crawford is a bigger puncher than Keith Thurman at this stage. Let me know what you guys think about that. I guess you'd have to ask all the opponents they've fought. But just going on track record, Terence Crawford stops people. Keith Thurman, even now, who's he stopping? You know what I mean? This guy don't really stop people. Ever since Keith Thurman moved up to world level, the knockouts all stopped. And there's something about the way Keith Thurman throws his shots. It's all very forced. I feel like he's not, at least as an adult, a natural puncher. They say that as an amateur, he was a really big puncher and he was knocking people out all over the place. He might have been one of those people, like myself, who was physically mature before their time. So when I was 13, 14, 15, I had the body of a man, right? Because I went through puberty very, very young. I stopped growing at 14. So I'm the same height now as I was when I was 14. But I was filled out. I was big. I had abs and pecs and, I was big. So when I would play sport with the other kids, I would just dominate everybody. You know what I mean? Especially in the contact sports. I just barging everyone around and just dominating everybody because I was big for my age. Obviously, because I stopped growing at that age, certain people caught up with me later on. You know what I mean? But Yeah, it might have been one of them ones for Keith Thurman when he was an amateur. I don't know. Maybe he was a guy who's just big for his age, heavy or well, not big for his age because he's not a big guy now. What I mean is physically mature for his age. So let's say he was, I don't know, 15, 16, and he weighed 140 pounds. Okay. And the other 15, 16-year-olds were a bit taller than him in his weight class, a bit taller, a bit skinnier, not as physically mature. He goes in there, a shorter guy than them, but he's just way more powerful. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying he was 140 pounds. Maybe he was 147 and 154 in the amateurs. I'm not sure because I know he fought Demetrius Andrade a couple times, well, once or twice. That's the best I can guess. Also, you have to factor in that kids in the amateurs are not going to take a shot as well as fully grown men, so maybe the punch resistance to punching power ratio for Thurman didn't work out so well as he matured into an adult and starts fight. I don't know. But at world level, Thurman's punching power has turned into a bit of a myth. Yeah, I know he hits hard, but it's nothing outlandish. He hasn't had the consistency of scoring stoppages and knockouts at world level that Bud Crawford has had. So, yeah, I think Bud Crawford's punching power is a little underrated because he's one of these guys that he's got a very languid style about him, Bud Crawford, even though he's fairly nippy. He's not like a Ray Leonard or anything like that in terms of speed or a Mayweather. But he's not slow. But he has this very relaxed way of his demeanor, same as Errol Spence. Errol Spence got a very relaxed demeanor as well. But Crawford is more fluid than Errol Spence, who's a little bit more mechanical. I'm not saying he's a super robotic, but Spence is more mechanical than Crawford. He's very loose and languid in the way he moves. And that can be somewhat deceiving because it doesn't appear as though he's putting a massive amount of effort into his punches. Do you know what I mean? His punches seem to come out quite effortlessly and smoothly, and it doesn't look like they should be very powerful, if that makes sense. But they are, so there's clearly some good leverage mechanics going on there. And there's a whole heap of other factors that can play into why somebody hits hard, timing, and, even bone density and things like that can play into how hard somebody hits. But yeah, whatever it is with Crawford, he's got deceptively good power, excellent timing, great instincts, and he's a very good finisher. And if you combine that with Spence's punch resistance possibly being an issue, I don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm throwing a possibility out there because he was definitely hurt and confused in that Ugas fight. And I know people could go back to Terence Crawford getting hurt many years ago against Uriel Kiskamboa, but that was many years ago in a lighter division. We haven't seen Crawford hurt since, and he has been hit. Whereas with Spence, we saw him hurt in his last fight. And I know this is top-level boxing. It's not a horrifying scandal. Oh my God, he got hurt. It's top-level boxing. Occasionally you're going to get hurt. But going into a fight like this against Crawford, you have to weigh these things up. Particularly when Spence said that he still sometimes gets flashbacks from that car crash. Did he get a flashback from the car crash when he got hit by Ugas and was looking on the floor for his gum shield, his mouthpiece? Was that a flashback from the crash where he's looking on the floor for his front teeth? I don't know. But anyway, it's all very interesting to contemplate and speculate about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about everything I've talked about in this video. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalogue of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and it's 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.